So how much are you willing to receive? Welcome to Tools to Manifest Your Dream Life with myself, Glenyce Hughes. Thank you so much for being here. I am so incredibly grateful. For those of you that are watching this on video, you will see a little kitty sitting on a step. You will see a sweet dog behind me, and there's another one you'll probably see at some point. We're house sitting in Edmonton right now, and these are the roomies that we get to spend time with. They're so sweet. Oh my goodness. So, how much are you willing to receive? Now, that's kind of a difficult question to answer, really. So what I'd like you to look at instead is, in your life, things around you, are you receiving from them? People around you, are you receiving from them? Situations, are you receiving from them? What I mean is, like, let's say something like your house. Are you receiving from it? Are you appreciating it, adoring it, loving it? I remember the first acreage that we bought. This was just outside of Vermilion, Alberta. And we had this most incredible view. It went for miles and miles and miles. And there was this big body of water. I mean, it was technically a slough, but it was a big, beautiful body of water. And I wondered early on in our stay there, would I ever not appreciate it? Would I ever get to the point where I didn't see it anymore? And I am grateful to say I never did. Every morning when I woke up, we had these patio doors in our bedroom, and I looked out the window, it was just, So when I talk about receiving, it can be like that. Receiving doesn't necessarily always this big, expansive, it can be other ways also. But what I wanted to talk about today was something completely different. And many of you, if you've been around for a while, you've heard me talk about communing with things. So in particular, the example I'm going to use today is communing with my business, meaning that I co-create with my business. I talk with my business. I ask my business questions. I allow my business to guide me, and have done this for years and years. And in the last couple years, things started to change with the business. And I didn't feel like I had that same communion with it. I didn't feel like I could hear it or sense it or receive what it was saying to me like I could in the past. And I basically added a bunch of stories to that, as I couldn't connect the way that I had wanted to, or the way that it was in the past. I had a lot of different reasons that I would tell myself, and all of it, of course, was judgment. I got to the point with the business, and I was talking with my accountant, and I understood her, that, just so you know, this is incorrect, but I understood her to say that unless your business was making a profit of 70 to 80,000 a year, meaning all expenses were paid, everything, this is above and beyond, and there was going to be that amount of, dog's thirsty if you can hear him, that would be that amount of money sitting in your account at the end of the year. Again, this was wrong information. I misunderstood her. And so what I thought was, well, then I guess I'm going to close up my corporation. So I've been incorporated for years, and because I wasn't making that sort of money anymore, I would close the business and still run as self-employed. So this was quite a process. There was a number of steps, and my accountant sent me the steps. And the first step on her list was to go to the registry office and close the business that way. That was first step. So I went to the registry office to close my business, and the woman there looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Well, do you still have a business bank account?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, if we close it, you can no longer access that." Which really made no sense, because those two departments don't talk to each other, like the registry and the bank. But I was confused. I phoned my accountant, and I was talking to her assistant, and I explained that they weren't going to allow me to close my business via the registry until I had done all the other steps on her list. She said, "Okay, well, I guess go do the other steps, and I'll talk to the accountant and just make sure that there isn't a misunderstanding." And so I started some of the other steps, was doing what I could things were taking longer because you need to finish your taxes, and there was just a lot of different pieces. In the meantime, my tax year ended at the end of April. My accountant and I got on a Zoom, and before we started talking about my tax year, she asked me if I could tell her why I was closing the corporation, that part of the business. And I looked at her funny because I was like, well, because we talked about that, and I wouldn't have this additional $70,000 to $80,000 in my account at the end of the year. So it was more expensive basically to run it as a corporation than to be self-employed. And then she looked at me funny and said, well, I meant that you needed to make 70 or 80,000 a year, not above expenses. And I was like, oh no, oh no, because I'm definitely going to do that. Oh no. Well, okay. So then she gave me an incredible, inspirational talk. And a few years ago, she did the exact same thing. And I don't even know if she knows that she does it. It's just so interesting because in that moment, she said everything that I needed to hear. And honestly, it felt to me like it was my business talking through her. I had tears. It was beyond words is what it was. So she said, take the weekend. We were talking on a Friday. She said, take the weekend and then let me know on Monday what you would like to do. She said, we can still close it. We got everything going. We can still close it. She said, or we could keep it going. So I said, okay, I'm going to take the weekend because for many months, and I'd already grieved the closing of the corporation, I was just not really expecting this to be a choice. And so I took the weekend. In fact, I took a week because I kept going back and forth. And some of it was because I'd already got other things in motion. And then I realized, my goodness, my business had talked to me because I found out there's very few registry offices that tell you you have to have everything else done first and the registry part is the last part. Most of them, it's the way the accountant said initially was you close it via the registry first. So when I went in to close my business via the registry, my business wouldn't let me. I didn't catch that. I just thought that they were being annoying and didn't know their stuff. Yes, I thought that was really interesting. And then I asked two friends of mine actually, and I will do this thing where I'm not sure. If I'm unclear about something, I will maybe text these two friends and I'll just say A or B. I'll know what A is and what B is, and then they will give me feedback. Maybe they will say, well, A feels lighter or B or whatever it is. Sometimes they'll say, is there a C? Those sorts of things. And so in that week of making this choice, I asked them A or B. And right away it was A, and A was to keep it open. Okay. By that Friday, I told my accountant that yes, I was going to keep it open. Now, the really cool part for me in this whole process was the minute that I told my accountant that, we got off of Zoom, and earlier that day, a friend of mine in England had posted that she was going to do a one-card reading for anybody who was interested. It was just her gift to us. And I don't normally say yes to those sorts of things. And there was a real pop on it that Friday morning for me to say yes. This is now probably 8 or 10 hours later that I just get off Zoom with my accountant. And I was just taking a few moments, just being present with what I had just chose and all of the expansion that felt, and still maybe a little bit of confusion with the whole process. And my phone, I have it set so that the messages will pop up when they come through, so you can see a little bit of it. And one thing came up, and I know this because the way my phone was sitting, I could see like the screen came on and there was something there, but I couldn't see what it was at all. And I was still kind of just in my spaciousness, but I noticed that. And then another one popped up, and that's when I turned and I looked at my phone so I could see what it was that was popping up. And right in bold letters, it says, thank you. And it was a message that was being sent by my friend who was doing the 1 card reading. Now, when I read the whole message, it had nothing to do with what I was talking about. However, I knew in the moment that I read thank you, I knew it was a message from my business. And it relieved any confusion, anything at all. There was just such this clarity of the communion and the capacities to commune with the business. And I get that going through that was required. I get that grieving the business, grieving the closing of the corporation was actually necessary, because that part of the business, the part that I was trying to keep alive, was dead. And I did have to let it go. I did have to say goodbye to it. And I'm sure there's a million ways to do that. And this was the way that I chose on some level. And it was so freeing to recognize that I could let it go. I could say goodbye. I could grieve it. And I could create new with the way the business is now. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to put into words, but it is like when maybe you go away you go on a trip. I don't know if you've ever noticed, I certainly noticed this for myself. It's like when I go away on a trip, I come back, I'm different. And it's like that, but in my whole process of these past few years, I haven't acknowledged the difference. I've still been operating from who I was or what was, and specifically in the business. So I share all of this for many reasons. One is the biggest one that I wanted to talk about today is really, are you willing to receive from everything? If you go somewhere, if you're in traffic and every time you're trying to turn right and you get blocked and you can't, and there's detours and all sorts of things, possibly, could you turn left? Like, is there something else? And are we willing to receive everything that is being gifted to us, all the information? Hubby and I, we'd applied for a sit in England. It was just a short sit. I think we had 3 nights to fill between other sits. And one sit had come up. I wasn't overly thrilled about it. The location wasn't the best in terms of where we were coming from and where we were going afterwards, but it was still going to fill those days. And they're kind of like, I think it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So not the easiest days to find sits. And the gal and I were going to have, it's called like an interview or a chat, the one morning, and then she had to cancel as she had something come up. And then we rescheduled for a few days later, and then she actually forgot. And so she wanted to reschedule, and I just said to hubby, this is twice. I think we're gonna listen to this. And so we didn't reschedule, we withdrew our application. We didn't explain why, we just said, something else had come up. And within a week, a way better sit in a way better location came up. And so if we don't push and we don't force and we listen and we receive, life can be so much more magical. And I say that not because I do those things constantly, because I don't. I just talked about how I didn't for a few years. And when we do, the magic that is there. Now, if you would like more magic in your life, I would love to invite you to my low-cost, high-value monthly manifesting membership. We have a facilitation call each month. We have a training call each month. You get energetic exercises. There's all sorts of things. And I would just be so thrilled if you came and joined us. So a question that you might want to be asking this week is, how much more could I receive here? In all the different situations, how much more could I receive here? Yeah. Have a great week, sweet friends. I look forward to chatting again next week.